Let's talk to Anson, pronouns he and him, calling in all the way from gerrymandered anuses, who wants to talk about the end times. Anson, you are on the Atheist Experience with Forrest and Godless Engineer. How are you doing today?
I'm fine. Yourself? Thank you.
Never had a bad day, man.
I'm good.
All right. Well, I just wanted to first start with, I guess, a preface, just to get it out of the way, make sure. Are you aware, I'm sure you are aware of some of the Christian beliefs when it comes to, well, not all of them, obviously, but some of them in regards to the rapture and, catching away the church, and they believe that, they'll disappear. And I just wanted to make sure you guys were aware of that belief.
Which Christian belief? Because there's a lot of different denominations of Christianity that all have slightly different flavors of what the rapture would look like. So what are you talking about?
To be honest with you, I don't put myself in a denomination, and I only say that because I'm always learning. And one day I might learn that, oh, hey, this one doesn't seem to fit the doctrine that I read in regards to the Bible, Old Testament, New Testament, combination,
so
kind of that whole thing. I guess I can say the closest I would consider is Baptist, but I mean, there are some beliefs back and forth that I found myself agreeing or disagreeing with. So.
Righteous. Okay, cool. So we'll go with, I will assume you are taking the new age kind of stance, the very modern stance on the rapture and how it will happen, that there are certain signs and signals that will lead up to it, wars and rumors of wars, famine, pestilence, blah, 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 and where we're waiting for the trumpets to sound, and then, the four horsemen and the whole semi-literalistic reading of Revelation, right?
Yes and no. The only thing I will add to that is I wouldn't necessarily call it modernistic. Even though the belief has been adapted rather recently, it's not that it wasn't there in the past. And the only reason I say that is because, for example, the whole Noah and his ark and all that going on, it has a lot of allusions. And that's one thing I believe that the Bible is pretty clear on, is a lot of repetition that foreshadows forthcoming situations, or whether that be other parts of the Bible or future events that would be considered eschatology. I would say that that's the only thing I wanted to just, my belief add on there.
Do you believe that it is possible for any person to know when the rapture is going to happen? I guess
Absolutely not.
Question.
I do not believe that is, no, that's definitely not.
Okay. That kind of helps
nowadays.
Clarify.
Yeah.
That definitely helps clarify.
Okay, thank you. So I guess the biggest point I wanted to say is I know, and I was speaking with the young lady on the phone previously, that just I was clarifying with her, a lot of atheists believe that, or have the notion that it's been going on for a long time. Every generation says it's the end times, and I completely agree with you in that regard. Every generation says, okay, this is the last generation, and then 300 years go by and nothing happens. So the only thing I wanted to bring up with in that point is that, technically speaking, in regards to the Bible and the description of what the eschatology is, it wasn't technically possible until recently, mainly being 1948 and the rebirth of Israel, considering a lot of the end times prophecies revolve around there being a nation.
So, so hold on. So are you claiming, therefore, are you claiming that Paul was either lying or was wrong about what Jesus told him?
Can you please tell me what you're referring to?
Paul seems to indicate at several points in his epistles that the end, or the Jesus' second coming or whatnot, was going to be coming within his own lifetime. For instance, is First Thessalonians 4, chapter 4, verses 13 through 17, seems to indicate that that Paul himself will be seeing the second coming of Christ. And so basically happening within his own generation, their own generation. And there's several other passages that we could discuss on that. But it seems to me like Paul seemed to indicate that pretty early on, the second coming was supposed to come.
Okay. Yes, I don't exactly know the specific passage you're speaking of, but I do know of some passages that refer. Speaking of, surely you will see the Son of Man, or there's some. I don't remember each passage in each verse, but I believe that the interpretation of that, and I'm not saying that. Albert, please, buddy, I'm on the phone. Sorry about that. I'm not saying I believe that there's several interpretations of something, that I just believe that there's one. And, you have to use other contexts throughout the entire Bible to kind of figure out the best. And that's why I'm always learning. I'm always, learning more things. I don't put myself.
Can I read you another passage?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verses 29 through 31. Paul is saying, I mean, brothers and sisters, the appointed time has grown short. From now on, let even those who have wives be as though they have had none. For the present form of this world is passing away, like present tense, like as in his lifetime. So like, I understand that maybe you haven't read up on these passages, but I feel like your whole idea here that the this eschatological end or whatnot couldn't have come until like 1948 when the state of Israel was defined or whatever. You have to contend with the fact that Paul definitely references this throughout all of his epistles, that it was ending within his lifetime.
Okay, so I think the best way that I have come to understand this is that there are, I guess, two ways to describe the end times. You have the last days and the end times. One last days being a smaller time frame towards the end of what would be called the end times, but the end times themselves. From my understanding and from my study, I believe that would be considered after Jesus's resurrection and the beginning of the New Testament church style, the new covenant and all that. And the reason I say that is because you have the idea of the end happening at a twinkling of an eye and at an hour which no one knows. So the end times have already begun because it is now possible for the end to come, but
sorry, I know. I realize I'm interrupting you kind of a lot, but the thing that you're describing right now sounds like one of those businesses that is constantly going out of business. That in order to create FOMO, that you're going to miss out on some kind of really great deal. But in reality, they're not actually going out of business because they cleverly named their business going out of business or something like that. And so that's what it sounds like to me. Or do you really want to represent your faith as just a constantly FOMOing sort of business that is driven on this idea that you're going out of business quickly, but have been going out of business quickly for 2,000 years?
No, because that's kind of where I was saying that I believe the marking of the latter days would be, and that's why when I forget what apostle, whichever one had said, hey teacher, with the signs of the end times, the things he had mentioned were things that kind of always been going on. Earthquakes have always happened, war, famine, all these things he mentioned have always been happening, and it's just rather an increase in the frequency and intensity, kind of like birth pains. They get more and more, but it's like I said, not that it's this is definitely the age and this is the time and all that. I'm just here to argue in my belief that it wasn't quite possible for two scenarios. One, the rebirth of Israel, and that's when the time could, and I'm not saying that it couldn't have happened earlier. Maybe Israel could have been reborn, I guess, or at an earlier time, perhaps. I guess that's kind of depending on human will and all that. But that the specifics of prophecy clearly need, certain circumstances and certain areas that need certain fulfillment without them happening. And I think that the one major one that absolutely had to be fulfilled was 1948. Therefore, thereafter, it was plausible to happen. I'm not saying that even though I do believe that we are in that latter half of end times, I'm not saying that necessarily.
Hold on. So why it feels to me like you're saying that God was powerless until 1948 for him to affect like this end times thing, and that for some reason God is on human timetables, because like Israel becoming a state in 1948, I feel like that's a very human sort of situation there in order for it to come. Like, why is God constrained and confined by human actions? It seems like human actions should be constrained and confined by God's actions if he's actually real by, your Bible's description.
Mm-hmm. So in that regard, I don't believe that it's that necessarily that he's restrained by those, rather that the certain things that have to be fulfilled kind of determine on what timetable. Because again, I believe he's outside of time, and that it's kind of something that doesn't matter to him going 1,000 years ahead or whichever direction or whatever. I think it's kind of irrelevant, but that his return isn't necessarily based on, hey, I feel like coming today just because I feel like it. I think it's based on and then the Bible does speak on the type of rampant evil and all that kind of what causes, or rather what determines that he's like, hey, it's time for me to come back, is the state of humanity, which is the will of man. So it would technically be determined by man in the sense of their own position.
State of evil. What are you talking about when you say the state of evil? Like 1948, that was after World War II ended.
Yeah.
And we had stopped evil. We had stopped evil. God didn't do shit to stop that evil. So it kind of seems to me like God slept through the Holocaust and everything, and then he comes in 1948 and he's like, oh look, yes, now it's time for the end times. And it's like every single year or every single decade or whatnot after that, it's the end times, it's the end is near, and all this other shit. And it's just continuously like, it's still, regardless of whether you start the clock in 1948 or when Paul thought, which you still haven't answered my question about whether Paul was lying or whether he was mistaken. But whenever you want to start the clock, you're still running out this whole FOMO thing of a going out of business sale for Christianity. And I just, at this point, it's really falling on deaf ears.
Okay, so go back to the earlier question. I guess I maybe not answered it clearly. I believe that Paul himself may have personally believed that it was his time, or that it was literal, or maybe that he would be the end would come during his lifetime, generation, whatever it may be. I do believe it's very possible that's what he personally believed, but that he might have been misunderstood, though, even though he did that. Yeah, go on. I'm sorry.
No. So I mean, but the fact is that Paul only got his information from the revelatory Jesus. He received revelation from the celestial Jesus that taught him these things. So he wasn't preaching anything like when he was preaching something that was his personal opinion. He made sure to preface it with the fact that it was his personal opinion. He does this several times, and I could look up the exact quotes if you need me to. But when he's talking about in general, the theology of Christianity and all that kind of stuff, I mean, he's talking about information he directly received from Jesus. So I guess my question right now is: have you received new personal revelation from Jesus that seemed to indicate that 1948 was the tipping point for this FOMO action?
No, I guess I wouldn't call it a revelation, simply using the context of the Bible as a whole. Because whenever, let's say during the time of Peter, Paul, the apostles, there wasn't actually a Bible. They had the Torah, and then they had various books that the Jews had kept, and that eventually was compiled into the Old Testament, all that kind of stuff.
Okay, yeah, but I need you to understand something. Anson. Look, it's about Paul having personal revelation from this celestial figure that you probably agree is a real celestial figure. I don't think that it's a real celestial figure, but Paul seems to think that he was getting real messages from the celestial figure directly. So it's either you think that Paul was lying or he was just simply mistaken about it. Well, I'm just kind of curious which one you think it is. Yeah,
that's what I was saying. I believe he was mistaken, because not necessarily that. Because the weird thing that I agree I don't understand, but I have definitely seen is that whenever Jesus speaks, whenever his words are recorded, a lot of what he says can be really hard to understand, and it goes a bunch of different ways. And I believe that the reason for that is because he had a really great understanding, obviously, of the Old Testament. So anytime he would say something, a lot of times he would actually reference Old Testament or kind of have like a juxtaposition of the current situation that he was speaking on and the Old Testament events and all that. So I think that, for example, Paul, whenever he heard it, initially wrote it down, later became his epistles, all that. He may not have 100% understood it because he didn't, look at this and then go and look at the example I gave you in regards to the rapture kind of being
what evidence do you have that Paul was actually wrong, though?
Can you rephrase that, please?
What evidence do you have that Paul was actually wrong versus you just having a different opinion?
I just believe that when you're using other portions of the Bible, it leans towards the. Well, are you talking about on his? You're talking about his. The situation occurring on his lifetime, right? That he was wrong about.
I mean, I'm talking about Paul's actual understanding of what his message was from Jesus, who spoke to him, or at least he received messages to him or from Jesus. It seems to me like it was if Paul got that wrong or misunderstood that, then what else could Paul have gotten wrong, kind of thing. So I'm kind of curious as to, other than just your opinion about, when the eschatological end is supposed to come, other than that, what evidence do you have to suggest that Paul was wrong about when the end times was supposed to occur?
Okay, so I'm sorry if I'm answering this incorrectly in regards to what you're trying to ask, but I believe that it's a big thing on context, because whenever you're not just context, like, Christians are, read context. I mean, a lot of the documents that are recorded and epistles and all that's been compiled, they have, I guess you can say, several layers that you can kind of look into and see, okay, well, this actually could be referencing, this Old Testament situation, and you can kind of look at that. And I believe that, let's say, when he was writing it down, for example, he might have been like, oh, so that could be happening during my lifetime, and he could write that down and everything. But there could be another layer that he maybe didn't see because of, he didn't have the ability at that time to compile all of what was written then, later, and before, to kind of understand the time frame based on a lot of the works, because that eschatology is kind of seeded throughout the Old and New Testament.
The one thing I'm not hearing there is any tangible evidence that would definitely say that you're right more so than Paul. Now, let me ask you this. How do you get around the fact that the book of Revelation, which I'm sure plays into your eschatological theology here, is written to describe or more in a description or a response to this circumstances of Roman imperial rule over the Christians in the 2nd century? It seems more in line with what they were dealing with then to describe that particular strife that they were going through, as opposed to any kind of real end time sort of idea.
Okay, so to be honest with you, in regards to that time and what it could be referring to, I don't have the knowledge or information to answer that honestly, but definitely something that I can look into. So I don't really have a great answer for you in that regard, no.
Okay, so it seems to me, and I know that I'm kind of dominating this a little bit there, Forrest. I'm sorry about that.
Oh, it's okay. I'm waiting for you because you're cooking, and I have a completely different set of questions. So I'm letting you do your thing first.
Okay. It just seems to me like you have a different opinion that's not based on any kind of evidence whatsoever, that you're just taking the fact that Israel was established as a state in 1948 to suggest some kind of eschatology could only have happened at that point or come to fruition at that point. But you don't really have any solid evidence to say that, only your personal interpretation of a collective of of different materials that are fictional creations from the 2nd century to describe the Christian strife against Roman imperial rule. And I just don't see how that actually gives us any kind of real inclination as to whether or not this end times thing is a real thing, for one. For two, when we should expect the end times to occur. And three, how the state of Israel being established by human authorities is some kind of indication of some great evil coming about.
Hey, bud. Okay, bud, go away real quick just for a moment, all right? Sorry about that. Yeah, so I guess the evidence, I guess if this is what you're asking for specifically in regards to Israel being a nation having to be a prerequisite of the end times and eschatology, is the way where I get that from is various parts, and I hate to say that I can't not quote verbatim or the verses, but there are verses that speak of there. First off, Israel being it being the center of the strife towards the end of the age. And I just find it interesting that Israel has been one of the, centerpieces of war for this last century, nearly at least, ever since its formation in 48. But along with the necessity of that being a state or its sovereign nation in regards to fulfill the prophecies or predictions or whatever you want to call it of the end time scenario. And then I guess real quick, since we've been discussing this topic for a minute, and I'd hate to waste your time on the whole thing, the second thing I guess I want to get to on that same point is a lot of the things that are described in the end times, and mainly I believe the New Testament, wasn't necessarily possible until modern technology in regards to nuclear arsenal and everything. Like, for example, Damascus and Isaiah 7, I believe, being destroyed in a ruinous heap in an hour. That's not something that was actually possible until, this last couple decades. Those are just the reasons I believe that we are approaching that.
Sorry. I mean, I feel like the meteor that took out like a majority of the dinosaurs would like to have a word with you about that, because I feel like at any point God could have flung a holy meteor or comet or something Earth's way and would have been able to do more destruction than a nuclear arsenal could have. And I think that would have been more indicative of God's ways, acting through natural means and whatnot. But I'm done cooking on this, I guess, and I'm going to let Forrest sort of ask his questions.
Right. Thank you to Nightbot, our automatic chat mod, for encouraging people to tune into the next Atheist Experience with me and Godless Engineer. I just noticed that. I have a totally different series of questions really quickly. And it's mainly just about like what Israel is, because the whole premise here, I understand, is that in 1948, the state of Israel was established, and that was the prerequisite necessary condition for then, the rapture to be happening. We're now in this phase of things.
Well, can I correct something real quick? I'm sorry. Not necessarily the rapture, but the end times itself, because of the end times, the Israel being a nation is part of that prophetic situation. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I get it. I would say so. In order for the end times to happen, one of the things that had to also have happened is that Israel became a state, and like that bothers the shit out of me for a lot of reasons. Do you think that the prophecy is guided by your God? That your God has some sort of power? Obviously it has some sort of foresight to know what's going to happen in the future, but like, do you think that God has any kind of guiding hand in this?
I do. I don't.
Okay.
I believe that human hands are the primary drive of it because of the descent, that the path that we're taking. But ultimately, His hand is guiding throughout. Yes.
I guess the clarifying question, just to make sure, is: do you think that the power of the prophecy and the will of God had more to do with Israel being established when it was and where it was, or do you think that had more to do with political leaders in the United States and the UK who were Christian and had a majority Christian population doing what they thought they should do as Christians?
The latter. I would say that first and foremost, because kind of going back to what I was saying earlier is I believe that the end time scenario is ultimately caused by human, choice. And
Right.
part of that is the culmination of the kind of things that kind of are necessary that ultimately man has decided to do. Yes.
Right. The reason I ask is because, like, is it possible that, like, there was rather than saying this was a part of the end times thing, it would be more appropriate to just say some Christians who believed in Christianity did what they thought the end times would look like, and now it fits the narrative better because that's what Christians who also believe the same things you do forced into existence.
I would say that is quite possible, and again, kind of going back to y'all's belief, and I cannot completely understand how you can look at it and go, that's just a self-fulfilling prophecy, of course. But the kind of the I guess the end point of this whole conversation that I was hoping to get to, just for the sake of our times, I was kind of wanting to lead this up into your opinion on, and it's kind of a weird tangent, but I'll get right back around to it for this reason. Your opinion on extraterrestrial life.
I'm not going to change topics that. Yeah, I'm not going to change topics that hard. I'm still on this one.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
Basically what I'm stuck on here is you said that this, the creation of the state of Israel was necessary, and John mentioned earlier where that came from, and that's kind of where I've been this whole time, is that, like, the reason it wasn't that all the Christians in the world got together and decided, hey, it'd be great is if we help the rapture happen, the end times happen a little bit more, so we're all going to get together and we're going to make this state of Israel. No, there was a fucking Holocaust. And then the world leaders got together and decided, hey, here's this chunk of land, and these indigenous people don't really seem to need it, so we're going to carve that up and make it a nation state and force it into existence. And now there's going to be this religious ethno state that exists here. And after decades of colonization, apartheid, and genocide, now we're going to have, the end times will be. And, like, I don't get personally why this almighty creator of the universe in his superpowers and foresight and all these things requires Nazis to happen, millions of people to die, and then different ethnic cleansing and different genocide to happen, so that through colonization, bloodshed, and geopolitics, he can eventually fulfill the prophecy that he himself made, so that he can return and the state of humanity is in the right state. Like, that just seems wildly fucking convoluted and dumb. And if he was really a good god or any of that shit, maybe he could just show the fuck up and do good things and doesn't need all of this nonsense. Why is geopolitics more important than just divinity? Like, what the fuck is that? I don't understand the point of the entire thing, Anson. That's where I'm at.
Okay. Well,
if I could, hold on, Anson, I do want to point out here that the genocide that the state of Israel seems to be committing on Palestine right now follows perfectly in line with, like, 1 Samuel 15, 1-3, as well as the other guidance that Yahweh has given, in the Hebrew Bible as to how the Israelites are to do war with people of other faiths.
So much so that if I don't remember the name of them, there was that one Israeli politician who actually used Amalek as an example of what exactly they're doing in Gaza at this moment. And so, like, I'm just saying, like, why that's my whole question is, why the hell, if this is this great prophecy of the greatest creature in the universe, why are Nazis a necessary part of God's plan? Why is genocide a necessary part of God's plan? Why is any of this a necessary part of God's plan? If the point is to, as you said earlier, to get humanity to a better state for God to come, that sounds like a fucking horrific way to get to where they're going.
I'm sorry, just to clarify, I don't think that the requirement is to get to a better state. I think the whole point is to essentially because we've been our own devices have brought us to this point. It's kind of humanity's direction that we are going at the point at this moment. And I'm not saying that we have to get to a good state for that to come back. It's rather the opposite, where this bad thing's happening. And I just want to point out, I disagree with Israel's and Palestine's side.
Right. I know.
You
Hold
disagree
on.
with Palestine side? What is Palestine side? Anson,
No,
existing?
I
To
disagree.
live?
I disagree with both the policies of both, that there's good and evil on both sides.
What's the, is it? Do you think the evil on both sides is comparable?
No.
Okay, great. Because yeah, dude, a guy kicking the shit out of a puppy. Maybe that puppy like stepped on a leaf too hard one time, and that was evil. But like, holy fuck, dude.
No. I just want to make it clear. I do not agree with Israel's
So
actions
you think
nor Palestine's actions.
So what are Palestine's actions? Like, it sounds like you're saying we're all sinful, so we all deserve hell. Is like the whole everyone's evil, everyone's wrong, that kind of thing. Which in the context of this is fucking weird, but like it still just doesn't. I would just love the answer to the question of like, why is all of this necessary for God's plan? That's the main question I have.
Yes, yeah, and that's what I was saying in regards to. It's not that. It's not. So when you're looking at the state of the world, whenever He returns, just in that regard, it's going to be horrible, and that the reason He's returning is because it's horrible. So it's not that it's, oh, I want it to be this way, therefore I can come back. It's because it's this way, therefore I must come back. That's the point. It's not necessarily that He wants it that way in order to do it.
Anson, I do want to point something out to you that the reason why I brought up earlier that Israel is committing a genocide in line with how Yahweh has dictated that Israel go to war is that you disagreeing with Israel's tactics and actions here is disagreeing with how Yahweh has dictated they do war. So like you saying that all of this is like a commentary or the state of evil in the world. And so that's why now is the eschatological end for Christianity. That doesn't make sense when that is exactly what how Yahweh wants them to do war with people. So that's an expectation of God at this point. Like you're essentially disagreeing with God. And in order to fall more in line with God and His the way God dictates war to be done, you would only have to disagree with the Palestinians wanting to retain their lives or to continue to exist, because God wants everybody but His own chosen people to be eradicated or people assimilated into His chosen people. So like the only way that this makes sense is if you agree with Israel at this point.
So when it comes to the Old Testament and the New Testament, where you have the Old Testament, where it seems like you can look at Old and New and say, hey, those are two different gods. Most people will come up to that conclusion because of the drastic difference in the way like, for example, Jesus, He speaks saying, hey, forgive somebody 70 times 7. And then, of course, if they slap, you turn around. But then in the Old Testament, you look at it and it's real harsh and bloody and just really hard to swallow a lot of the content. And I think the reason that there's a hard, well, not necessarily, I'm going to be honest with you, I don't know why there's that hard shift, but I believe that the change of the covenant, of the New Testament has pretty much made it to where, like, for example, those brutal, I guess, actions and everything are not permissible. And I'm not.
Where does He say that?
I don't really know how to. I'm sorry.
So in 1 Samuel 15:3. Go attack the Amalekites, totally destroy all that belongs to them, do not spare them, put to death men and women, children and infants, cattle and sheep, camels and donkeys. That's to their credit, that's precisely what Israel is doing in Gaza. And that is why I found out it was fucking Netanyahu. Surprised I didn't remember that it was him who said that that's exactly what they're doing back in 2023. I raised a lot of alarm bells then, and sure enough, 2 years later, look where we're at. So where exactly in the Bible does God say, never mind, stop doing things that way? That's no longer how I want you to do war.
So the way my understanding of it is obviously that the punishment of sin is death. The punishment for everyone of sin, and that includes the Israelites, that includes their enemies. Death is the punishment for that. Now, when you look at it from God's chosen people kind of thing, I don't believe that the Israelites themselves are excluded from that punishment. It's simply I guess you can say a mode or method of which God uses, what was it? What was the word I'm looking for? The car to which God uses to show, hey, this is what evil is, it has to be eradicated because that's the punishment. And then in the New Testament, because the idea of an Israelite and God's chosen people has been changed from, only Israelites, the God's chosen people, it's become anyone is God's chosen people whom they come to Jesus. So it's not that the law's changed, it's that the perspective has changed is the best way I guess I can put it. So
yeah, but nowhere does Jesus say
evil.
nowhere does Jesus say don't go to war like I previously told you to. Like he never renounces his commands for how wars to be done or anything like that. So, I feel like the vagueness of Jesus in these particular points is a knock against you here, because obviously Jesus, reaffirms the laws of Moses as to what constitutes sin when he says not a jot or tittle will disappear from the law until the new heaven and new earth come. So it's very obvious that the Old Testament still applies. What is considered sin still applies. The main thing that is sin is disobeying God, and God is mandated for you to do war in one kind of way, and that's 1 Samuel 15, 1-3.
Mm-hmm. So
where's the logic broken that I just rattled off to you as far as whether or not Israel is going against God?
I honestly couldn't tell you with scriptural evidence. So I can definitely, give me a second, make a note, because I do.
Can I just make sure I heard you properly? Also, you were saying, I asked you why these events were necessary, and you said they're not necessary as events by themselves. It's that God wants to. How did you phrase it exactly? I don't want to straw man you here. You said that these things aren't forcing God to come back. It's that when all these evil things happen, then God will need to come back and set things straight. And so he's waiting for things to get bad enough. And so the prophecy isn't this happens that then allows me to come back. It's that this happens, which forces me, requires me to come back to fix things. Is that fair enough, what you said?
It's pretty close, but I would say it's not that it's being forced. It's that the reason he comes back, because it's gotten so bad. So the reason it takes so long, first off, according to the Bible, the reason he's taking so long is so that he could save as many as possible. But when it gets to the
for all the children and all the victims of the Holocaust and all them.
So saving it, that he's not talking about life. He's talking about salvation. So people dying, that's always going to happen. That's just the nature of humanity. We die.
So he's waiting for enough people to be born, so the global population is big enough that he can have enough souls to save.
Not born. To be honest with you, I think whenever an abortion occurs, I think that those souls go straight to heaven. But that's kind of just a tangent.
So you're pro-abortion then? That's good.
Anyway, so when it comes to the state of the world getting to a point, it's that, it's to a point that it's so full of evil. Because you look back, and that's kind of what I say about foreshadows. When you look back at Sodom and Gomorrah, he said, hey, there's 10 people there. Or actually, he starts with 50. Hey, if you can find 50 people, I'll go and save the city. No, not 50. Cool, go to 30. No, 30. Can't you find 10 people and it's just your family? Then that's kind of the same foreshadowing of the end times when it comes to the timing. It's really dependent upon the heart of the people. And the same thing with Moses. Moses' family was the only one that was saved for the flood, and the door was shut, and then people came back at the end of the day. They're like, oh, hey, let me in. It's kind of the same setup in both regards.
Right. So I'm sorry. That was a lot just to get to where we are now, where it's like, we're in the exact same place where best case scenario, God is just watching these things happen indifferently and knows that it's not going to matter anyway in the end, and is just waiting for the right time when he can make the grandest of entrances. And it's just this diva moment. And the worst case scenario is this is all part of the plan. This is all a good thing. this is something that we should all be excited about because it means we're bringing us closer to the end times.
So I believe the first scenario is more accurate, but instead of him standing off and going, hey, let me let people do what they want, I believe, like I said at the beginning of the call, that he does have a hand that he guides and helps, direct, even though man themselves make the ultimate decisions in regards to, oh, well, do we want to blow up this country? Yeah, sure, we'll blow it up. That's man's decision. But God does work within these scenarios. And I guess one of the points that I can make in regards to that is, for example, in Nigeria with the horrible, and it's not just Nigeria, it's all over the world. You have just people killing for no reason, just because they feel like it. Good people, or people you might consider good, people you might consider bad. I believe that there's just needless death, and I believe that in those scenarios, he uses the bad to have good, and that's why you have some. And again, it's not necessarily fact. It's kind of more just story that's just hearsay and everything, but you have some story.
What's the good that we got out of the Holocaust?
I'm not saying. So I believe the good would be those. So the perseverance of the faith that then later turned. You can hear stories of people going who were Nazis and who were the people murdering and killing and everything. The horrible people who did that, who had later come to the repentance of that. And the good was that both the people that were involved, that were the oppressors, and the people who were victims, both sides had scenarios of people coming to both repentance of their actions and turning to the right way. So it's not that it all was good. It's that there was good that came of it.
Was that good worth it? Was the fact that a few Nazis said "Sawi," was that worth it?
I honestly can't say with certainty one way or the other. I will say that
is it at all even remotely possible that it's worth it?
Yes. Because I believe, and just to go off that, and then you can respond. The reason I believe that is that, let's say, and then there's scripture to back it up. Let's say
I don't really. I'm at this point. We are now at the Holocaust was worth it, and I don't know why we're continuing. That's kind of where I'm at now. Where it's like I tried to get there earlier. We started with my questions were why was the Holocaust, and then the forced creation of Israel, and then the establishment of an apartheid state, and then ethnic cleansing, genocide, colonization. Following that, why are these things a necessary part of this? And you said, oh, they're not. They're not necessary. That's just the state of the world. That's humans being evil. And I was, for a minute, I was like, okay, maybe he's going to turn this around. And now we're at the Holocaust was worth it because somebody had some feelings afterwards, and those were good feelings. And like, I don't see the point in continuing to discuss anything with you after that. That's you should be ashamed of that. Fuck your God. If your God thinks that this was worth it, fuck your God.
So as a last point, and we can end the conversation if you don't mind.
Yeah, I'm not going to let you make a last point. And I'm not going to do that. Why would I do that? Why would I do that? I thought for sure when I brought up like, hey, like, why are geopolitics more important than, or like more influential than your God's almighty power? I thought for sure that would be something that we could agree is silly, but you rolled with it. And now we're at this point, and I'm not going to do it. The genocide is wrong, and there's nothing that we can be like, but at least, somebody learned something from it. This one, after this dude killed a few million people, it opened his heart, and that's what Jesus wanted. Like, we're not doing that. Anyway, if you have anything left for Anson, John, you're welcome to, but I think
it's rather crazy to state that the Holocaust was necessary just so that some people could come to Christ. I mean, not only does that just simply not make any kind of sense for an omnibenevolent God, but also what you're claiming is that these people that did horrible things, in the moment, I guess, torturing people, killing people, and all this other stuff. As long as they just said, I'm sorry, and they believe in Jesus and everything like that, they get to go to an eternal paradise afterwards and gets accepted by God. Like, I don't know. I feel like that is a total lack of justice, which I know a lot of Christians out there like to promote. Christianity is like the only time when justice is served, but it kind of seems to me like the morals of a person don't really matter to that kind of God. If that kind of God just wants worship, then it really doesn't matter if you're, the shittiest human being to ever live. Obviously, you can still go to heaven as long as you bow down and praise that God.
Yep. That's what gets me is it's the whole thing like where you talk about, well, the individual human life and all this stuff and all the suffering here on this planet, it doesn't really matter because there's eternity on the line. And at the end of the day, God's love is eternal. And so whatever happens here, it's nothing compared to that. And you get into that same ridiculous, it's like divine command theory, but like backloaded, where it's like, if you're good and if you're the most evil, horrific, fucking murderer, puppy kicking asshole just in the whole world, this piece of shit who's just been raised, his first word was the N-word and it's never gotten any better, right? Just this evil person just has to come to Jesus and then he gets to go to heaven with Hitler and me. And it's like, fuck off. Like, I'm not going to sit here and talk about what's worth it when we're talking about the loss of millions of lives and followed by the loss of millions more. It's just not... It's not appropriate and it's not worth anybody's time and it's not worth taking seriously. And it's been fucking 42 really fucking boring minutes just to get to this point. And I'm just, none of this goes any farther than Anson's own personal opinions. None of this goes any further than just like what this dude thinks because of what he's read, because of what he imagines, because of what he prefers, because of what aligns with his personal morality and whatever like that. It's just not worth continuing on. So